Imagine two people. Both earn the same salary, both have the same rent, the same bills, the same takeaway coffee habit on Tuesday mornings. But one of them has $1,000 sitting in a savings account, and the other has nothing. Here's the strange part. The person with zero isn't spending more than the person with $1,000. In fact, they're spending almost exactly the same amount. So why does one person have money and the other doesn't? This isn't a story about income. It's not about budgets or cutting back on avocado toast. It's about something deeper, a psychological wall that almost everyone hits when they try to save money for the very first time. And most people have no idea it even exists. Because here's what nobody tells you. Your first $1,000 is not just hard to save. It is the hardest money you will ever save in your entire life. And once you understand why, everything about the way you think about money changes forever. Most people approach saving money the same way. They hear a piece of advice, save 20% of your income or pay yourself first, and they try it for a few weeks. Maybe they even open a savings account. They transfer a little money over, and then life happens. The car needs a repair. A friend's birthday comes up. The rent goes up slightly. And quietly, that savings account gets drained back to zero. And then the cycle repeats. Save a little, drain it, start again. Save a little, drain it, start again. Month after month, year after year. And the frustrating thing is, it doesn't feel like they're doing anything wrong. They're trying, they're thinking about it, but the number just won't stay above zero. The common belief is that this happens because people don't earn enough, or they spend too much, or they just lack willpower. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is something that behavioral economists have studied for decades, and it has nothing to do with maths. It has everything to do with the way the human brain experiences money when you have almost none of it. Here's the core idea. When your savings balance is close to zero, every single pound or dollar you save feels instantly at risk. Your brain isn't thinking about the future, it's thinking about now. And right now, there are 100 small financial threats hovering over your life at any given moment. Think about it like this. Imagine you're trying to fill a bucket with water, but the bucket has a hole in the bottom. You pour water in, and it drains out. You pour more in, and it drains again. You're not making progress, you're just fighting the leak. That's what saving feels like when you have no financial cushion at all. Every unexpected cost, a parking ticket, a doctor's visit, a broken phone screen, pulls directly from your savings because you have nowhere else to pull from. So you never actually accumulate anything. You're just constantly plugging holes. This is what psychologists call financial scarcity. And scarcity does something very specific to the brain. It narrows your focus. It makes you hyper-aware of every immediate threat and almost completely blind to long-term goals. When you're in scarcity mode, saving for 6 months from now feels completely abstract, but the $80 phone repair feels very, very real. There's actually a famous study by researchers Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir that showed people operating under financial scarcity performed worse on cognitive tests, not because they were less intelligent, but because their mental bandwidth was being consumed by financial stress. Their brains were full. There was no room left to think long-term. So the reason your first $1,000 is so hard isn't a character flaw. It's a design flaw in the financial situation itself. You're trying to save money in an environment that is actively working against you. And until you break through to that first $1,000, that environment stays exactly the same. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because once you save that first $1,000, once you cross that line, something almost invisible shifts, and it changes everything. That $1,000 doesn't just sit in your account. It starts doing something for you that no budget spreadsheet or savings app ever could. It acts as a buffer. Now, when the parking ticket arrives, it doesn't come out of this week's groceries. It comes out of the buffer, and the buffer gets replaced. When the phone screen cracks, same thing. You handle it, you top the buffer back up, and your financial brain, the part that's been running on high alert for months or years, finally starts to calm down. That calmness is not small. That calmness is everything. Because when your brain isn't constantly firefighting, it can finally start thinking about the future, about investing, about building, about what comes after the buffer. There's a concept in personal finance called the flywheel effect. The idea is simple. At first, spinning a flywheel takes enormous effort. It's heavy, it resists. But once it starts moving, it builds momentum, and eventually, it spins itself. Your first $1,000 is the first push on that flywheel. Think about it from a purely practical angle. Before you had savings, an unexpected $200 expense was a crisis. It derailed your month, it created stress, maybe debt, and it set you back weeks or months in progress. After you have $1,000 saved, that same $200 expense is just a Wednesday. You handle it, you move on. You lose almost no momentum at all. And here's the psychological kicker. Once you've experienced that feeling, the feeling of having a cushion, of handling a problem without panic, you never want to go back. The motivation to keep saving doesn't feel like discipline anymore. It feels like self-preservation. So what do you actually do with this? How do you break through the wall? The first thing to understand is that you cannot save your way to $1,000 gradually, slowly, a little bit each month, not if your bucket has a hole in it. You have to treat the first $1,000 differently from all future savings. It is a one-time mission, a sprint, not a marathon. That means for a short, defined period, say 60 to 90 days, you go into what some people call a savings blitz. You cut every non-essential expense you can identify. You sell things you don't use. You pick up extra work if that's an option. You tell yourself this is temporary, and you funnel it all into one goal, $1,000, one comma, that's it. And you keep this money somewhere slightly separate from your everyday account, not in a complicated investment, not locked away where you can't touch it, just in a separate savings account that you have to make a deliberate decision to access. That small amount of friction makes a surprising difference. And you treat that $1,000 as untouchable, except for genuine emergencies. Not a sale, not a concert, not a birthday present. Real emergencies. Because the moment you dip into it for something that isn't a true emergency, you break the psychological contract you made with yourself, and you have to start again. Now, once you have it, once you've crossed that line, you don't stop. You build. You take your savings muscle, now warm and trained, and you start the next goal. 3 months of expenses. Then you start investing. Then you start building income streams. But all of that becomes dramatically easier because you are no longer operating under scarcity. Your brain has room to think. Your options have expanded. The flywheel is moving. Here's the thought I want to leave you with. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for a raise, a windfall, or the right moment to start saving, but they're waiting for something that won't solve the problem, because the problem was never about the amount. It was always about the threshold. $1,000 doesn't make you rich. It doesn't change your life overnight, but it changes the way your brain works. It changes what feels possible. It turns off the alarm that's been running quietly in the background of every financial decision you've made. And here's the most important thing to remember. The people who eventually build real wealth, who invest consistently, who retire comfortably, who stop worrying about money, almost all of them will tell you the same story. There was a moment early on where they just decided to get to that first number, and then something shifted. That shift is available to you, not someday, not when your salary goes up, now. Because the first $1,000 is the hardest money you'll ever save, but it is also the most important money you will ever save. The flywheel is waiting. Give it the first push.